Do. Salutations and blessings to all of you who are present out there in Hell I Don't Know land. It is another great edition of Hell I Don't Know. And with me today, I have a artist, great artist, a mural. And we're talking comic books, we're talking drawings, we're talking how all that got started. I may even give a little background about when I used to do that myself. But before I get to that, let me introduce to you the person I have with me today. A Mississippi native, straight out the mud, as they say. But he is an illustrator. He is a muralist, as I said earlier. He is a curator. He is a CEO. He is a builder and architect of making great things himself. He is coming straight from the studio. He is a gentleman of stature in the community. He's done a great thing for the community, not just the community, but the youth of the community, to show them that there are other ways that their future can be. And it only starts with the pen meeting the paper, because the pen makes love to the paper and they create great things that becomes their children of the future. With that being said, I'm going to get into this episode because we need to know how all this started. And that can only be told by Mr. Justin Ransburg himself. That's who I have with me. Mr. Ransburg, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. How about yourself?
Did I pronounce your name right?
Yes. And
Okay.
It's funny because like over the years, people have pronounced it in weird ways and then even like added letters. So you got it perfect the first try.
I will tell you that this episode is called That's Just Incredible.
I like that.
And when you're dealing with art, and I mean, that's pretty much all you can say is, hey, that's just incredible. Not the movie. That's not about the movie. That's just, I mean, it's just incredible. Sometimes you just look at it and you're like, that's just incredible. The first thing I want to ask is, how are you doing mentally?
It's funny that you asked that because like, I mean, life has been kind of like up and down lately for sure. So I am maintaining. Lately, wintertime has been kind of weird to me because it's like way hotter than it usually is. And it's kind of throwing me off a little bit, but I mean, I'm doing well.
Well, you know, old Mississippi boy, old Arkansas boy, you know, we deal with all seasons in one day. So, you know, I'm from Arkansas, so I get the seasons in one day, just like Mississippi get the seasons all in one day. You talked about it's up and down. So when it's up and down, what do you usually do to keep that controlled, keep it managed? So what do you usually do?
Usually, like
Besides
let's say
draw. Besides draw, what do you usually do?
Oh, besides draw, usually just like something to take my mind off of it. So like the weather, for example, is something that's completely out of my control. So it's like, well, I can either enjoy it for what it is, or I can just complain about it, or I can just go play video games because that's really relaxing depending on the game that you're playing. So,
yeah, you're talking one language now. What video games do you play? What system do you have?
The system I have right now is a Nintendo Switch. So I've been playing like Super Smash Brothers, Animal Crossing, and Hollow Knight. And Hollow Knight has probably been one of the most frustrating, fun games I've ever played because like one part of it, I was stuck on for like a month, like a literal calendar month. Like, I need to get through this. My competitive nature won't let me be beat by this stage, and I got through it eventually. You know, it's just like, oh, okay, good. I can put the game down for a little while now.
And I understand that frustration too, because it's one of those we're like, oh, I don't want to be like the people throwing the remote at the TV, because then you're damaging the TV and you be like, oh. And then the computer has all these hidden strengths that you don't have when you're playing that same character. You're like, why can't I have that? How did you block that? I was pushing the button. Oh, so, yeah, I get that also because I play the PS5. It's so relaxing to beat up on the system, to beat up on the AI, and it's one of those who moments. So it's
right.
I get that. So I had a Nintendo Switch, but I gave it to my godsons. So I used to have the Cube, the PlayStation, the Xbox, because people probably don't remember now, but they all used to have different games on each system. So as
Yeah.
I bought them, I would have all of them because they all have different games. So I'm like, well, I play this one on this system, that one on this system, that one on this system. But now they all have the same game. So I was like, well, there's no reason for me to keep spending money to have all of the same games on all of the same systems. So I ended up with the PS. So that ended up being my choice.
Okay. That's a good choice.
Is the Switch the only system you have, or do you have other systems?
I have other systems. I have an Xbox, I have a Nintendo Wii, and a PlayStation 3, but they're just kind of off to the side because the Switch is the main one that I play.
You have the new updated Switch that just released. Was it this year with the new OLED screen on it?
Oh, no, I decided to, get the regular version of it, and I think by the time the OLED came out, I was just like, hey, I already have one. I'm fine. I don't need
Yeah,
the
that was
extra
me.
clarity on the graphics. I already have one, so it's cool. It works. It's cool.
That was me. My niece, she was like, "You should have waited. Don't you could have got the OLED?" I'm like, "I'm good." I'm like, I just bought this and I'm good. And then my god kids, they like five, and I'm like, I'll send it to them because I play the PS5 more. And when I travel, I don't pull the Switch out. I usually be on my phone, creating episodes or looking at, okay, I can do this episode in March. I can do this in February. So I have a lot of things that I can be taken care of, or I'm researching information for whatever city I'm in because anything that pops up is becomes an episode to me. So I'm always doing history episodes, and I'm always trying to find out, like the I like comic books, old school comic books. So I'm like, let me bring some light to black comic book artists. That's how I got
Hmm.
with Mr. Jackson Comics. And I said, hey, I
Oh,
want to interview you. And so he shot me your name and Mr. Wildfield Art's name. So he gave me your two. He said, hey, you can do these two. I'm like, cool. I said, man, I
yeah,
still want to hit you up too. So, but I know he got married a week before last, I think. So I know he's been busy. So my patience is not thin. I have a lot of patience. So, because I know life continues to run. So, and I know I get
true.
busy at times, and people get busy, so that's not the problem. Uh, it's 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 something that you have to be aware of because if you think it doesn't happen to other people, you're wrong
Hmm.
because life happens.
It really does.
Because if you know it's happening to you, you should also be aware that it's happening to other people. Now, of course, if it's happening to other people like 5 or 6 times in a row, you're an artist. If someone's canceling 6, 7 times in a row, then you're like, man, I'm just gonna stop dealing with them. Of course,
Yeah,
you know the back end of that. So
yeah, because then it's a pattern. It's just like, all
yeah,
right, if you've done this many times and you keep doing that, then either break the pattern or you're gonna lose some friendships.
yeah. I mean, it's too easy to send an email and say, hey, I can't do this. That's too easy to do. I want to get into talking about who's Mr. Ransburg as a youth, which means who's Justin as a youth. What was he like?
Okay. As a youth, I guess I'm definitely more calm now. So I was a bit wilder in the sense of like, running around, playing outside, having fun, uh, getting into fights, normal kid stuff. Um, and my older brother, because you asked, you were wondering kind of like how I got into art. My older brother Maurice, he was
Mr. Williams.
studying graphic. Hmm?
Mr. Williams.
Yes. Oh,
I
so
did a
you,
little
you saw
research.
it on the
Yeah, I
Gotcha.
did a little research. I do my research. I do my research.
Cool, cool. Because he would definitely be upset if I didn't mention him. And I tell him now, like, hey, everything that happens to me in a good way related to art, I blame you. And yeah, so he got me interested in it because he was studying graphic design. He would always be drawing like around the house. And we're 10 years apart. So you know, uh, being that having that big of a gap in age, it's like, all right, if I see my older brother doing it, it must be cool. So one day I asked him like, hey, can you draw this picture for me? He looked at me, he was like, no, go do it yourself. I was like, oh, I mean, I didn't know that was an option, but okay. So I tried to draw the picture, and he was just like, yeah, it's good, but this needs to go that way. That looks like this. If you're paying attention to this line, it should be more like that. And I think it was like a picture of Bugs Bunny or something. And from there, just kind of uh, hanging out with people in school that like to draw. Got into like anime in middle school, and then like Dragon Ball Z and Digimon and Pokemon, all that kind of stuff that was floating around that time. And then from there, by the time I got into high school, I was just like, hey, I need to figure out how to make money from this, because this is what I want to do. Like I know I can do other things, but as far as like getting up every day, whether I make money or not, this is what I would rather be doing. Because I easily could have became like a lawyer or a doctor, but I don't think it would have been as fun or enjoyable. So
That's interesting.
So
what was besides Bugs Bunny, was Bugs Bunny the first thing that you remember drawing?
let me see, Bugs Bunny, The Simpsons. I used to draw a lot of Bart Simpson. Who else?
Well, let me ask this: what's the first freehand thing that you remember drawing? Just freehand on your own.
Okay. Back when I was in, I think like late elementary, early middle school, some friends of mine, we got together and we were trying to make like different characters and stuff. So we would base them on like, elements. Like this person can control fire and they have this power and they can do all these things. And I want to say I was around like 6th grade. So that's what, 10, 11? It was around that time.
Around that 8 to 11 time frame. So yes, depends on where the school is at. That's also like Captain Planet. A lot of people may not remember Captain Planet, but he had the 5 people: Earth, Wind, Fire, and it's not the group people. Just so y'all know, it was an actual guy that formed just like Voltron, except he had people that controlled Earth, Wind, Fire, Water, and what was the 5th one?
And
Earth,
Heart.
Wind, Fire, Water, and say again?
Heart.
Yeah, and Heart. And so remember, Captain Planet came together to fight the things of the world, just like that. So I remember that episode. It was cheesy to a lot of people, but it made sense to how pollution and stuff was being fought, because that's what it was teaching you, how to fight pollution.
Yeah, like as we're talking about it, I can still hear the theme song in my head.
Yeah. Is that where a lot of your inspiration for your comic books came from?
I would say, yeah, it's definitely an influence in there, but like another influence was like Sunday comics in the newspaper. And yeah, like I used to live for like Garfield and Kathy and Boondocks especially. And just every Sunday.
Never get old. That dude is almost like 600 years old, and he hasn't aged a day.
That all lasagna died. It's doing it for him.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing it for somebody.
Right. It yeah, just like just reading those comics and kind of seeing like how they structured things, and then trying to make my own here and there. When I was in high school, like I had a group of characters that I made, but the furthest I ever got around that time was like maybe 3 pages, because I wouldn't even plan them out. I would just draw it like, oh, I had this idea, draw it out, and just do this. And I was figuring that out, through like reading books, going to the bookstore, and doing my best at the time. And now I've gotten to a point where it's like, oh, okay, if I had planned it out better then, it may have come out better and I could be further along, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And it was a learning experience that I needed. So it was helpful.
So looking at that, the comic books that inspired you, how did that take you to come up with this amazing quote that I'm finna read because I do quotes to start my show. And this
Okay.
quotes come from you, as a matter of fact. It says, working ethic desk is not for me. So I'm going to go all the way on art. Where did that quote come from?
That quote came from, I want to say, when I was working at the museum. I used to work at the Mississippi Museum of Art, and it's one of those experiences where it's like, yeah, I'm making money, but I'm not really doing what I want to do because sitting at I worked at the as volunteer service, so I was sitting at the desk when people come in, like, oh, hey, welcome to the museum. This is the exhibition that's currently up. Restrooms are down the hall. This, that, and other info. And one day I kind of sat there and started thinking, like, okay, it's a part-time job. I make this much per hour, and I'm only working 2 days a week. I start doing the math, and it's 4 days every 2 weeks. I make X amount of money. I could do that with one painting if I really tried. So I should just go in and do that. And like, I think, and also not think, but also around that time, a friend of mine's wife, who was only about 2, maybe 3 years older than I am, had passed away. So just having that so close to me, it was just like, oh, I could really go at any time. I just need to go in and do this because there's no telling when the exit's going to come. And yeah.
Did you create a character off of her?
No, I haven't. I mean, it's probably crossed my mind at one point, but out of respect, like, no, I shouldn't go in that direction.
Because the reason I ask is because with superheroes, black superheroes, some of them are created off of uh, admiration for people that's passed in their life, and they've created that figure because of that person. That's why I asked, have you created a character off of her?
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, you'd be doing it more in honor of her and just
Okay.
using her name, not exactly the exact figure, but you be using her name to honor her in the comic books. That way, she's living on as a superhero, kind of like Wonder Woman, but she wouldn't be Wonder Woman. She'd be called whatever you're going to call her. Her alter ego would be Super Mom, or Super Soul, Soul Woman, or whatever that would be. And also, if you use those names, I need my 10%. They heard it here on the show. I gave them that idea. I need my 10%. I asked because, I saw Axiom 1, 2, and 3. So what was the inspiration for Axiom 1, 2, and 3? And that's not your first books, but what was the inspiration for Axiom 1, 2, and 3?
Okay, so the inspiration for those came because a lot of people kept asking me, like, hey, you have all these drawings, like, what are you gonna do with them? And you should make a coloring book. And like the idea just kept popping up, where it's like coloring book, coloring book, coloring book. And these were all people that didn't really like talk to each other. They had individually talked to me about this same idea. And I looked up like what axiom means because it was just kind of one of those words that I heard and it was just kind of like floating around. And I looked it up and it's like it's different definitions for it. So it's like in math and philosophy, and then there's another like area that it's used in. But the main definition of it is a self-evident truth that doesn't require proof. And it's just like, oh, that's really cool. I'm gonna use that. And the way that I made them, I made it in 3 different books. So the first book was like a safer word, like you can take this anywhere, take it to school, take it to church, kind of thing, where anybody could like color and just relax. And then the second one was a little more spicy because a friend of mine, he draws like really cool stuff, like that's not safe for work. Most of it is not safe for work, but his anatomy and like use of perspective and everything is like so on point. And I had told him like, hey, you can be, making money from this. And he was like, man, nobody's gonna want to pay for smut, is what he called his artwork. And I was just like, oh. I mean, I'll prove you wrong. I got time. So, that's kind of where the second one came in, because I had this story kind of floating around in my head about like a frog that runs like a bathhouse, and that would be, yeah, that would be kind of the central. I'm not gonna give it away in a sense, just in case I go back and revisit it, but he runs this bathhouse, and then some of the images are like snapshots of things that happens there. And then the third one was like both of those two together, plus like color versions of some images that I had already made.
It sounds like Kermit Cousin is a pimp.
He could be. I mean, down the line, they
Like
related somehow.
of the pimp in Mississippi.
They both from Mississippi.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. So I mean, hey, I'm all for it. And the third book, the other book, I forgot the name of it. What's the name of the other book that you have? Because I saw four, because I remember the Axiom 1, 2, and 3 because it stuck out to me. The Black Excellence,
Black Coffee.
Yeah, Black Tar. Yeah, that one.
Hang on, let me see if I have I know I have a copy of it on hand, but it may not. I'll find it. I'll find
make sure I remember. I was trying to make sure I remembered the name of that one because it stuck out. It, like Axiom stuck out. The name of it stuck out to me, so that's why I asked about it.
Gotcha. Okay, so that one came about because I bought an iPad and I was using Procreate, and I was just trying to get better at using that program. And a local coffee shop asked me to like do an art show, and I was like, yeah, sure. And so the name Black Coffee kind of floats around from that, but the images themselves, you know, were selected. You know, I selected some of the digital images, and they're all kind of centered around like Black culture and, you know, kind of futuristic. Sorry about that. Kind of futuristic imaginings kind of thing, and also just common everyday stuff. And from there, I was like, okay, well, I have all these other images that weren't used for the show. I should just go ahead and like put them into a book together because people might be interested in buying it. And sure enough, a lot of people bought a copy of it, so that was really cool. And it was the first.
The good thing about yours is you're self-published, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of them have been self-published.
I was looking at the website as you were speaking. That's why I was asking.
The only one that I have that wasn't like, you know, completely self-published was my very first one. Is called Wake of the Wave, and that was a collection of drawings between 2015 and 2017. And I got a grant from the Greater Jackson Arts Council to help with printing that.
So, when self-publishing, what is the process, just for those who are listening, that they have to go through to self-publish? Because, you know, you hear things like, hey, it's easy to self-copyright. All you have to do is send it to yourself, and, you know, you've done that. But with self-publishing, with what you can tell the people that are listening, what is the process to get your stuff self-published?
Okay, so, I mean, the very first step is you got to have something to publish. So,
yeah,
you know,
of course,
if you're writing if you're writing a book, so to say, like, you know, have your book, you know, completed, edited, have somebody else read through it to check for grammar. And then from there, depending on what kind of book it is, if it's like a photo book or if it's like a novel, you got to figure out like, okay, what do I want the book to feel like and look like? And then from there, you can select the person or the company that you want to like start actually making the copies for you, because Amazon does it, and this website MixAM, they also do it as well. And depending on who you go with, you can get them to send you like a sample pack. So they'll send you like, oh, this is the kind of paper we use. This is an example of like how it would print out. And here's a booklet to show you, you know, how the pages would come out, you know, actually. And most companies have like a guidebook to show you like how to put your files together. And then from there, it's just a matter of like getting a sample copy, making sure it's right before you actually send out all of them or tell them to mass produce all of them.
How long does that process usually take? Does it depend on what you're trying to do with the book, or is it 3 months,
Um,
4 months, 6 months, a year? It just because I've heard different
it
stories from different people that's published books. So hey, it was a year. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. So, what was your process like?
okay. Hang on just a
Because you're
second. I got
drawing, so, yours would probably be different because you're drawing and putting stuff in the book versus, let's say, me. I would be putting quotes, so people would have to read the quotes, and like, maybe you want to change this word, but with quotes and stuff that's specific to me, the person, that's how I want it to be said. So it's not a lot of grammar that's to be corrected in certain things you're trying to say.
right.
That would be the difference between the two books.
Okay. So with that, wait, hang on just a second. I need to grab some tissue. Give me a moment. I'll come right back.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll do this ad break. Right now, this episode is being brought to you by Pictures. It's true. They do say 1,000 words, but that's the basics. Don't limit yourself to being basic. Everyone does not operate as you do. Once again, this episode is being brought to you by Pictures. And 1,000
Okay.
words is the basics. Don't limit yourself to being basics. That is my ad break. Now,
Sorry
back
about
to
that.
That's okay. I got ad breaks that I do myself, so
Okay,
I can
perfect.
always take a break.
Okay, so as far as the process, so it just depends. It really depends on the person. My suggestion is doing like something smaller first, because people, myself included, have this idea where you go, "Oh man, I should make it the best, the biggest, the best thing that I can make. Everybody's gonna love it." And da 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 da. What's called a zine, for example. Like that's been something that I've been kind of like obsessed with lately. And for those that don't know, zines are basically like self-published like mini magazines, but they don't have ads and they can literally be about anything. And there is a zine maker named Brady Bree on Instagram, like Brady X Bree. And following like some of her tutorials and things, like I really appreciate her for putting out all this information because it helped me a lot. And so doing something smaller first can kind of get you in a position to do bigger things because you can catch little mistakes like layout mistakes and maybe like you thought something was going to print a certain way, but when you printed it out, it actually like flipped somehow because that's happened to me before. Like I printed some
It happened
stuff.
to me at work. Yeah,
Isn't it weird? And
I
it's
ain't even
like,
got to print. I ain't even got to be
yeah,
printing on no book. That just happened at work trying to print. I'm like, man, what happened? I knew I printed it, the portrait, and it print out landscape, and then it don't even print both sides like it's supposed to. So that's not. So that's Zine. So y'all know Zine, right?
yes.
Okay, because
And
I saw that at the end of one of your book titles too. So that's why I'm glad you explained that.
gotcha, no problem. And yeah, so like doing smaller stuff like that first, um, kind of gets you acquainted with like how to do it before you make the bigger stuff. And then, because once you make the bigger stuff, it's like, oh, this is easy. Um, and for me, because you asked about like my process specifically, um, I had been drawing like the different images and making sure they were the same size for like roughly 6 months to a year, I want to say, before I thought about like putting all of those images together. So I've had at least like probably minimum like 100 different images to choose from, and then just kind of like I printed them all out like real small to actually like physically move the images around, and then say, oh, okay, this one will work, that one won't. I'll use this for something else. and just kind of like going through that process. So it took roughly from start to finish. We'll say about 8 months to give it an average.
That's not bad though. 'Cause you hear some people talk about writing books, and they say it took them almost 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But that's why when I said, but it depends on what type of book that you're writing too. So you have to be specific with the details and who's reading it. Everybody can read it because some people are stealing ideas. So you have to be cautious of that.
Yeah.
Because of your love for creating, uh, my research tells me that it took you to the godfather of funk, Mr. George Clinton. You had an encounter with Mr. Clinton. How
Yeah.
funky was that to meet the legend?
Okay, so it was pretty incredible. I didn't get a chance to like meet him in person because at the time he was like in London, but we had an art show together back in what was that, like 2014, 15, I want to say. And that came about because when I came back home from Houston, like I used to live in Houston, went to Texas Southern University, and then, after graduation came back home. I started working at Gallery One over at Jackson State, and a friend of mine, she kind of got me connected to where it's like, hey, this is a great opportunity. You should work here. And I was like, all right, cool. And very nonchalant about it. Just like I didn't even think she was serious until she called me later in the day. Was like, no, I'm serious.
Your mic went out. You back on, but when you zoomed in to show your closeness, your mic went out. That's how serious it was that she even blacked out your voice right there and then. She didn't even want you to know what was said. That's how
Right.
serious it was.
So yeah, thanks to her, like she was working there, then I worked there, and then she came back, and then somebody else, after she moved again, somebody else took over the gallery, and because of that person, she was like, hey, you used to work here, and we have this show coming up. I want you to be a part of it. And I was like, sure, okay. And I don't think she told me until like the day that I really went to drop the stuff. I was like, oh yeah, we're doing a show with George Clinton's artwork. I was like, wait, P-Funk?
Surprise!
Like,
Surprise!
I didn't even know he made artwork. Like what? And it made sense
And
when I
you
saw.
so that's interesting. So
Yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah, and like I got a chance to meet his daughter, who was really really nice. And while the exhibition was up, I think he was touring in London, so I didn't get a chance to meet him in person. But I mean, I'm glad that experience happened. I learned a lot, and it kind of like
Uh,
it renewed my like faith in what I was doing. Like, yeah, I'm going in the right direction because this man's a literal legend, and I had an art show with him. I should probably just go full in on this because I had a day job again for a little while around that time. And I mean, it's necessary. Like, I know some people are like, oh, I just want to do art full time all the time. My phone batteries. I will, there will be times when, you have to just pay your bills. So sometimes sales aren't where you want them to be, but as long as you're going with it, it'll eventually like turn around. So you just got to keep the
no,
faith and keep.
you have to take the blessings of the small steps that you're getting to realize what the big steps are going to look like. And
Sure.
even though he wasn't present, his name was present. Just to be in the same room with his name and his art and his family and all that puts you in a direction that you're aware of now. You're like, man, and even after that event, I'm listening to you talk about it now. You was like, whew, did I just do that? With
That's
George
really how it
Clinton.
was.
Even he's not here, but still his art is here, his name is here, his daughter's here, I mean his daughter. And wow, my stuff is hanging besides his stuff. So when they see his, they see mine. I'm in the same place. It's almost like an up and coming pop singer, R&B singer, in the same room as R. Kelly, Prince, Michael Jackson, Beyonce's, the Janet Jacksons, the Patti LaBelle's, and their music is being played in the same place as those greats. Never mind what R. Kelly did. He's still a great. So I don't really care what y'all say. He's still a great. Once his music plays, you can't deny that because he's written a lot of great songs. That's the thing about it. He's written a lot of great songs. It's not about your perspective because there's a lot of great artists that's done a lot of things that doesn't matter compared to the art. And that's what I'm talking about, the art.
I follow your point. He's one of those people where I separate the art from the artist. So it's like, I don't know, man, because you got to look back, and then when you see the actions and then look back, it's like, oh, there was some signs in there that we ain't pick up on. But that's a whole different conversation.
But that's the thing. There wasn't signs because as an artist, when you're writing or you're drawing, you're not doing inspiration that anyone can see off of that. So if you're going to look, since we're talking about it, if you're going to look at all of his music and say there are signs there, then you're looking at everyone's music and say that there's similar signs there because you just can't point to that and say that there's just signs there without looking at everyone's and say, that's the same thing as he did. So there's signs there because music, everyone has signs. That's how everyone's going to judge his music because everyone has signs. If that's the case, Keith Sweat has signs. Elvis has signs. Patti LaBelle has signs because Marvin Gaye has signs. If that's how everybody's going to look at it, because I mean, let's open our mind and let's stop not just judge that because of what was said.
Yeah, I mean
that's just the truth about it. So it's.
I definitely
that's how I separated it.
Gotcha. But my thing is like, whatever work you make, you put a piece of yourself into it. So it's just like people have asked me over the years, like, hey, why do you draw like so many pictures of women all the time? And I was like, because women are fun to draw. Like, I don't want to look at dudes all day. Like, this is something that I appreciate, and I'm interested in because like dudes to me are just like blocks when you draw them, but women it's just like there's a curve and then another curve, and it's just like it's like this winding trail of like lines that
particular part of the chiseled clay that looks great. So I get you.
Yeah, so whoever the person's interests are always gonna like show up in their artwork, no matter like what the medium is, in my opinion.
But I get that. But I back to the original statement. I said that looking at his art, not his life, because it's not up to me to judge anyone's lifestyle. That's why I mentioned him as it's because I'm not here to judge anybody's lifestyle. On my format, I don't talk about the negative because there's enough of that going out there. Plus, I wasn't in those rooms to know what happened. Neither one of us, last I checked, was in those rooms to know what happened. But I can talk about all of the great music that he's done because there's enough money being made off him off of the social media sites. So obviously, if they can play that, because they did take it away until TikTok brought it back. And then it's all of a sudden fun to do. But you only took the ones that has his name as the feature, but not his name as the producer and the one that wrote it.
Oh. Wait, save the recording. Save the recording. My phone is about to die.
Oh, it's go ahead and plug it up because I'm still recording. You can plug up and come back.
Okay, I have it on this charger. Let me see if I can put it on my other one. I have one of those like wireless chargers.
Oh yeah, I got one of those too.
And it's not the best. So you're gonna see the ceiling for a while.
That's fine. Before I had my back surgery, I had to stand up, still do the recordings.
Any means, right?
Hey, got to be done.
Yeah.
But going to another point, I remember going to places back in the day that no longer have the same name now. Like a lot of people don't know that New York Stadium used to be called the Bronx Zoo because of everything that was happening there. Or, recently everything's politically correct now. So we're changing names on a lot of things. Like WWE used to be called WWF. But I want to ask you about the beginnings of Jackson Drawing Club and the importance of a place formerly called Sneaky Beans. So how important was Sneaky Beans to your career as of like right now in the drawing club?
Okay, so the origins of Jackson Drawing Club started with uh, a, me and a friend, Sam Clark, who is a phenomenal like visual artist and potter, and he also makes like these really cool. Oh shoot, battery died.
I hear you. Yeah, I can still hear you. It was charging. Your screen just went out, but I can still hear you. I heard it. This is some of the things that happen in the podcast world. This internet goes off, but you always got to have a backup plan. And my backup plan right now is to do an ad break. Right now, this episode is being brought to you by pictures. It's true. They say they're worth 1,000 words. But that's the basics. And you shouldn't be basic. Because everyone doesn't operate like you do. Don't be basic. So yeah, this episode is being brought to you by pictures. So far, we've covered his origin story. We've covered that Mr. Ransburg is a phenomenal artist. We've covered about publishing, and we've covered about his love for drawing, period. He was about to get into the beginnings of Jackson Drawing Club, I think is what it is. We've also talked about Mr. Williams, his older brother, that got him into drawing, that gave him a lesson up front. And he told him, go do it yourself. It's a lesson that a lot of us should learn. Do it yourself. And then get the instructions after you do it. Failure is not a bad thing because it teaches us a lesson on how to do it. I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all that you can find Mr. Ransburg at Ransburg. His website is mrjustinransburg.art. He has a lot of his art on that website. Make sure y'all go support him, follow him. He does a lot of murals in the Mississippi area. Also, the Jackson Drawing Club. Make sure you follow that also. If you're in the Jackson, Mississippi area, stop in and say hi. Stop in and ask them to draw you a digital picture, or he may even draw you a logo. Get those comic books for the kids. And I'm always appreciative of people in their journey because it's one of the things I like doing as a conversationalist, talking to new people about where they came from, where they're going, how they got here, what it took for them to keep going, what it's been like for them. Because as with me, meeting new people is important. And I learn by meeting new people. And of all things, that's just incredible. Because learning new things at any age is always going to be incredible. We are back. We are ready for business. We're going to kick this off like we never ended. Welcome to part 2 of the interview with That's Just Incredible, Mr. Ransburg. When we left off, you was beginning to tell us about how you and Mr. Clark used to rendezvous at the Sneaky Beans, and you created the Jackson Drawing Club.
Yes. Okay. So the story behind that is there was an art show that I was a part of back in 2016, and it was like kind of like an annual art show where they get like artists from around the city, and it's like, oh, here's a new kind of like up and coming artist that y'all should know about. So I can't remember everybody off the top of my head, but it was me and like 5 or 6 other people. And my friend Sam I hadn't heard about him and seen his work before, but had never really talked to him in person. And we got into a conversation after the exhibition. He was like, "Hey man, we should like sit down and talk and like draw together sometime." I was like, "Yeah, that'd be cool." And because I used to, when I lived in Houston, there was a like a weekly, I think it was weekly or bi-weekly artist meetup called Skessions. So Skession, IONS, and just people from like all around Houston would come together at a bar, and we would like drink and hang out and just share ideas. And he had something similar to that when he lived. I think he said he lived in Atlanta at the time, and he was like, "Yeah, that'd be fun to do here." And I was like, "Okay, well, you invite people, I'll invite people, and we'll see what happens." And I think the first drawing club meetup was around this time. I think it was like October 15th or 16th. At Sneaky Beans was our first like meetup spot, and about I think 5 or 6 people came, which was really cool because it's like, oh, I mean, we were not expecting more than just us to be here, but more people are here, the more the merrier. So from there, we just kept like meeting up and at different locations at first. So like one week, Sneaky Beans. The next week, a different coffee shop called Cups, and different coffee shop called M7, which is like in Ridgeland, which is like 10-15 minutes away from Jackson. And we would kind of like bounce around for a while, and then eventually we got start thinking about it. It was like, well, we're using a lot of gas. We should just pick one spot and just keep meeting there. That way people know where it's going to be at the same time, every week. So it's consistent. So we started meeting up at Sneaky Beans. And because Sneaky Beans is in like Fondren, which is kind of like the artsy part of town. And from there, we just, kept meeting up, inviting people. Lots of people came through, men, women, children, all kinds of like racial backgrounds, because everybody's invited. It's like, I mean, you know how to draw. Oh, you don't know how to draw, but you want to learn. You just want to get out the house and have fun with the Jackson Drawing Club. Like, it's fun. And yeah, we've done that a total of 7 years at this point. So the pandemic kind of interrupted. Well, the pandemic interrupted the in-person meetup, so we switched over to using this app called Discord, which originally was for like video gamers and live stream kind of stuff.
It's for everything now.
Oh yeah, and we used that for a good, I want to say 2 years. Like we still have the server. It's not as active as it used to be, mainly because like the regular people that would come to the meetups, everybody's kind of like integrating back into society. So, it's kind of slowed down. And after a while, I was like, you know what? I keep trying to set up meetups. So we're gonna take a quick break until like the new year. So that's where we are right now with it. But the drawing club was definitely instrumental, I want to say, in a lot of people like developing, because one guy, his name's Kaz, he wanted to work in comics as well. And he actually works with, I think Dram Stroker? People on the internet are gonna like clown me for not remembering the guy who
Bram
made.
Stoker,
Yes.
the Dracula drawer guy. Yeah,
Yeah,
Bram Stoker. I think
Drum
it's Stoker.
So he actually works with the people that create comics centered around Dracula. And another friend of mine, he was working in video gaming for a while. I don't know what he's doing now, but because of coming to Drawing Club, all these people have been able to like figure out what they wanted to do and actually like dive into it. So yeah,
So that's a good thing. Is the drawing club still active?
yeah, it's like if we were running a marathon, it's that part of the marathon where like you start jogging versus like full out running. So it's
So,
still going, but not like as up to speed as it was. It'll come back in the new year.
but that's good because you don't want it to always to be a full out run as much as you want it to get to a point to where you can start to jog and be comfortable and not continue to run and use all
Yep.
your energy. So if you're at a place where you're jogging, then you're able to enjoy everything you're seeing. Because when you're
True.
running, you're not really enjoying a lot of things you're seeing as much as you're like, well, I need to come back to that. Oh, I need to come back to that. Oh, I need to come back to that. But when you're jogging, you're like, oh, that's beautiful right there. You know, I can draw that. Man, that's amazing.
Right.
Man, that was lovely. Man, that's nice. But when you're running, you're like, man, that's a lot of stuff I need to see. So it's a
Right.
difference. A lot of people probably don't realize that, but it's a difference. The Jacksonville Drawing Club took you to 601 Studios. Are you still at 601 Studios? How amazing has that been, and what type of doors did that open for you, being at 601 Studios?
Okay, so being at 601 Studios.
601 Studios, for those who haven't done the work like I have. What is 601 Studios?
Okay.
Everybody like, what is 601 Studios?
I mean, y'all are talking in code. Like, what is happening?
Yeah, what is 601 Studios? Let me look this up.
Well, I will fill them in. So 601 Studios is a music and arts academy. And what they do is, well, what we do, because I work there, is teach music lessons, including vocal lessons, instruments, singing lessons, on top of like doing art lessons as well. And almost 3 years ago now, they like brought me in when they were first starting, a month and a half at that point. And we want to incorporate more like visual art into what we're doing. And, you know, from a recommendation of a friend of mine who was the secretary at the time, she was like, hey, you know, Justin can draw. I'm pretty sure he can teach comics too. And I was just kind of like, I mean, I think I can do that. And they were like, well, we'll pay you to do it. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. I can figure it out. So, right. So we figured out, like, you know, what time, how many days a week. And right now, and has been for like the past couple of years, I teach comics on Tuesdays from 4 to 5. And then later on, recently, we've added another like drawing class from 6 to 7. And, you know, I had been doing that for a while. And then as 601 Studios grew, they decided to like incorporate homeschool days into what they did. And what that means is like homeschool groups come in so that their kids can like, you know, get different experiences and different lessons. So like they'll take like vocal classes, American Sign Language is an option, drawing classes, of course, and visual art classes. Visual art. So visual art is different because, you know, visual art builds on top of the foundation of drawing. And I've taken a break from doing the homeschool days this semester because it was just, I was moving in too many different directions. I was like, hey, I need to rest, because rest is important and underrated. If you don't think that you need to rest, you're lying to yourself. And the work that you're trying to do will be better if you take a break. So get all the rest you can, eat all the food. Pulling all-nighters is not the greatest thing for your art or yourself or your health. And I will be the first person to loudly say that, because I've experienced it firsthand. And when your body decides like, hey, we're not doing that today, what are you going to do? You're just going to have to roll with it. So
yep, you're going to be laying right there on the floor like, somebody help me. Somebody help me. But
right.
I tell people all the time, I say, you know, I teach classes, and I tell them, I said, look, you leave in the classroom at 1800, 6 o'clock. And I tell them, I said, it's not that I'm not staying here all night. That's because you have to go get some rest, and you shouldn't stay up all night because you're not giving the one muscle, the one organ, the one thing in your body that needs rest. It's the one thing that needs rest. And if you're staying up all night trying to stress over things, then you're not letting your brain rest. And your brain needs to rest. It's one thing that you don't let rest because you're trying to stay up all night. You're trying to pull all-nighters. You're trying to go 5 or 6 days without rest. And then that one time you do rest, it's not enough for your body and your brain to recuperate because you're not letting it get what it needs. Your body will get it. I mean, 3 or 4 hours, yeah, but this needs the appropriate rest because when that shuts down, that's it. So that's it. So it's and people don't realize that.
Yeah, and like you're if you when you give yourself that time to like stop thinking about it for a while, you actually get better ideas because of that. It's just like, oh, I gave myself the space away from it. I didn't even think about, you know, 2 plus 2 is 4, but also if I do this, this, and that, I can expand whatever that metaphorical 4 is out bigger. All because you stopped for a moment and was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm just gonna take a hike. Like, I'm gonna take a hike, look out, take a quick jog in nature, and then come back. And it's like, oh, I didn't notice I can change this thing in these few subtle ways, and it'd be way more beautiful. Like, the number of times that has happened has been phenomenal.
So when you take your breaks, what do you do when you take your breaks? Say, okay, I need a break. I need 5, as people say. I need 5. I need 10. When you take your break and say that's too much for me right now, what? Because we started off talking about mental health. So in that time where you take your breaks and you notice that you've been overworking and you've been starting to get to a level to where this is starting to stress me out. What do you do in the time that you take break to re-energize yourself to go back? How long? What's the longest you've taken?
Okay. What I usually do is I'll go outside and just kind of take in like what's around me, because sunlight as like something helpful has been underrated, and just doing things that I don't relate to it. So let's say like I'm stuck on a drawing or something. I'm like, how am I gonna make this work? I'll go and like play around on my iPad. So I used to play around with like GarageBand and make instrumentals and stuff. So I'll do something like completely different from that task. And also like, riding my bike, talking with people, going places that I usually wouldn't go, in the sense of like, traveling or a different part of town, just to kind of like look around and see like, oh, this is what people do over here. And I want to say the longest like break from everything, because like this, the longest break I've probably taken maybe is like 3 days to a week, because I'm always kind of like thinking about these things anyway. So in the back of my head, wheels are kind of turning. But I put ideas away, just kind of in a box somewhere, and then maybe come back to it like a year later and like, oh yeah, I was on to something there. Let me see what I can do now, because then I'll have more like information to work with that wasn't previously available. And yeah, I mean, as far as like relaxation, I mean, just taking naps and traveling more, that's always been helpful. So I went to Long Beach for an event back in May, and it was my first time going to Long Beach, California. Like, I've been to California before, but Long Beach specifically, it's so completely different from the other parts of California I've been to. Because like, for one, the cactuses, like the cacti out there, grow similar to grass. And the whole time I was there, I was just like snapping photos. So I actually need to use those to like make some artwork. Think about it. So
I've been several times, so I'm familiar with the Los Angeles area, the Cali area. I've been to every city now in California because I went to San Francisco last year, which I've been to San Francisco, but I think I've been to every city except Sacramento. Is the only one I haven't been to. But other than that, I've been to all the major cities in California. So, but I've been going to California since '94. So, yeah, I've been in and out of California since '94. So I'm in Long Beach. I'm familiar with. So it's
man, and it's And it's crazy, like the just thinking like, okay, California, the weather's gonna be warm, it's gonna be this and that. I went at the end of May and it was just like cold. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
where's
that's
this
after
coming
the snow it
from?
came through. And it was like, wait a minute, what is this weather? So yeah, remember 'cause it it had that snowstorm uh that came through. Was it in May? No, it wasn't in May. It was in March. Remember, it was this year when that snow came through in the
Oh yeah, I forgot
upper
about
part
that.
of California because they had that flood and then they had the snow. And it
Hmm.
was in the upper parts of California, and that's never happened before. Uh, was it? Did it snow in LA?
Maybe.
Because they had that crazy weather earlier that part of this year, and
Yeah.
so when you went, that was the layover from that crazy weather that they had.
Huh. Oh, and it
So
was it was definitely like beautiful too, because like it was just flowers everywhere, just like and that experience overall was great. Like I definitely want to go back and check it out again. And I actually went out there for a zine fest. Like I mentioned zines earlier. And yeah, I went out there for that and just gotta kind of like absorb the culture, so to say. So traveling definitely helps me like relax.
I talked to a chef early on in my season. He's a vegan chef, and he was telling me that he went to Los Angeles and he went to the a vegan festival where they just served vegan food in LA. And it was one of the vegan, I forgot what it was called, but it was one of the biggest vegan festivals that happened. They have it in Toronto, they've had it in Kansas City, but it was the first time that they've ever had it in LA. And it's just
Okay.
like going to a theme park, and that's all they have is just vegan foods in the area. And I was like, they have what? And I was like, yeah. He was like, yeah. And he said, people show up like they going to church. He said people show up like they going to church. He said they be dead, they be dressed to the nines out there just tasting that food. He said he was out there for a week, uh, filming and talking to different people, meeting different people that serve vegan food in California. And I was talking to about some of the areas he went to, and he was talking about the Seventh-day Adventist Church and how that's tied into some of the areas out there with the vegan food. And so I was like, man, that's interesting. And so it was interesting. And I was like, as much as I've been to LA, I didn't know that the Seven-day Adventist was uh, that into clean food and that area. And I was like, man, I've been in that area that you're talking about. And he was like, yeah. He said, he was breaking it down to me. And I was like, man, I've been in that area and I didn't even know that. And so he was telling me about all that. I'm like, man, I wish I'd have knew that. I'd have went. Uh, and so that's why when you say LA, I'm like, just talk to someone who told me about the vegan festival, food festival that they went to in LA. So it's
Yeah, I'm
none
gonna
of
have
this
to
stuff
look
is
that up
going on when
too.
I go out there though. So I don't know what's going on. They must don't like me. They must know when I'm coming. So they be like, he's coming. We're not having none of those things when Teddy's coming. Let's not plan anything. He's coming then.
Yeah, it's different out there because like being and growing up in Mississippi and like the South in general, like I notice people in Mississippi, like even if you don't know them, like they'll say hey to you, like, oh hey, how you doing? It's like I'm good. How about yourself? All right,
Southern
have a quick
hospitality.
conversation and then then keep going. But there, like I went, my first trip to California was Los Angeles, and I tried to like just have a conversation with this guy in like a print shop, and I was just like, oh, just I ain't even asked the guy's name. I was just like, hey, it was a good day, huh? He kind of looked at me and was like, okay. And I was like, yeah, blah 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 blah. He just kept moving over, and eventually he was like, hey man, I don't know you. And he kind of looked at me like, why are you talking to me? It's like, oh, excuse me, I was just trying to have a conversation. My bad.
But at least you got that. I was in Brooklyn, New York, and the street workers. I was like, "Hey, how's everything going?" They didn't even say nothing back to me. So yeah, they didn't even me and my niece walking, and I was like, "Hey, how you doing? How's everything going?" They was just looked at me. They didn't even look at me. They just like, I'm like, hmm, they don't speak up here. So
They really don't. And like that's something that was happening out there too. Like I remember these people were like playing some like djembe drums, and I was recording them. You know, I was kind of like trying to get dramatic angles or whatever, and like people were just walking past me the whole time, just walking across from me. I'm like, oh man, y'all rude, but whatever. I still got my footage that I'm trying to get. It's cool, but it's cool.
So let
So,
me ask you, being in California, there's a lot
mhm.
of murals in California. Have you had the opportunity to put your stamp on an empty wall in Cali yet?
Not officially yet. So, um,
Because there's a lot of empty walls in Long Beach. Not a lot of them, but there's some in Long Beach.
oh yeah, I saw something where they had like a Long Beach like mural fest. I don't know if they're still doing it, but while I was there, I kind of taking in the sights and things, and LA definitely had the most that I've seen. I've been to San Francisco. I don't remember seeing as many, and then Long Beach was kind of like kind of in the middle. I guess because it's so like spread out. But I haven't gotten a chance yet to do it. But I mean, if you know somebody I need to talk to, I will definitely reach out to them. And if
Uh,
anybody listening, watching, though, I'll let you
I
know.
may I may know someone that's familiar with the area that may know some people that may know some people that may know some people. Swig of water
Okay.
for the swig of
Yeah,
water
water.
for the working artists in the area.
Quick water break.
Make sure you drink your water, people. Staying hydrated keeps you going.
Oh yeah, help your brain.
What do you usually have to go through for the future mural painters of the world? What's the process to paint an empty wall to get it decorated? I know uh, you see some people, like, let's say, the local school in Jackson, they come to you like, hey, we want to dedicate this wall to the school, do it as a school project. But if it's not a school dedication project, what's the legalities to get a wall done with, let's say, uh, with your art on it? You have paperwork you have to do. You have to go talk to the city. What does it take for you to get a mural done?
Okay, so the process is pretty straightforward. Like, if you know the person or are talking to the person that owns the building, it's usually easier because then it's a matter of like, okay, what do you want me to put here? What restrictions do you have? And then, if it's a paid commission, like what's your budget? Because that's going to determine like the the materials I use, the design I use, um, and everything else that goes into it. Um, but for the most part, it's just like just kind of like you're just using regular like common sense in the sense of like you don't want to put something like too shocking in the sense of like little kids are going to come through here. You don't want to have like sexually graphic
Yeah.
imagery by an elementary school or something. Um, and the usual process is talk to them. They'll give you an idea of what they want, and you kind of help guide that. And also ask them what their budget is, so you can kind of like work within that. Or you can even just say, hey, that's not enough to get this done. I'm sorry, I can't help you, which is fine because it saves everybody else time because they can find somebody else that may work within their budget or find more money to go towards it if they like your work enough. So yeah, that's been pretty much my experience. And like the first mural that I actually did was thanks to a friend of mine named Philip Rollins, who owns a record store, comic book store, and art gallery all in one called Offbeat. And when he opened his store, he asked me to be part of an art show there. So me and Adrian Dominic, we had like a show together, and because of that exhibition, um, a woman named Kimberly asked me to paint a mural for her pole dance studio, her and two of her partners own. And we went through the whole process of like, okay, here's what we have an idea of, and we kind of like I sketched out ideas, got their like feedback on it, like, yeah, this is nice, but can you make it this color and change this? And similar to the story I told you about with my older brother. and just making those tweaks and things. And then they told me their budget, and I was like, yeah, I can work with that. And um, I and just having like a realistic time frame in the sense of, okay, I think this will take a week. Let me add like 2 more weeks on top of it just in case something happens. Because things pop up, cars mess up, I don't know, power goes out, and things got to be repaired. So you got to be able to kind of roll with the punches.
So, what is a manga creator?
A manga creator, or depending on the person, mangaka or mangaka is basically
Did I say that?
traditionally is a Japanese person that makes comics, because manga is like Japanese comics, and so a mangaka or mangaka is the person that's making it. And I mean, I'm not Japanese, but a lot of my art is influenced by like Japanese comics and animation, because I grew up watching Pokemon, Digimon, Dragon Ball Z, um, Toonami, because Toonami has so many, Yu Yu Hakusho, et cetera, that it my artwork kind of falls into that like lineage of art. Um, and it's been something that I've wanted to create pretty much forever. Now that I'm really thinking about it, and yeah, it's just a matter of doing it now.
So, do you get offended when people say that's just cartoons and not call it anime?
No, not really.
That's
Because
that's a big
anime,
conversation for some people. They're like, no, it's anime.
it is.
So,
Yeah, it is. And I mean, to me, I go by the whole definition where like anime is short for animation. So
which
traditionally,
which
so
it is.
traditionally, anime is like specifically like Japanese animation, but there's also like French animation that had Japanese people working on it. So is that anime too? Or there's a Dutch story that had Japanese people working on it that got translated into French. So is that anime too? Like it's so nebulous where it's just like, I mean, cartoons are seen as like American, but it's all animation. So I just call it animation.
That's what I call it. I'm like, it's just cartoons. That's all it is. It's cartoons. Just to see the argument start up for people that watch anime. They hate for it to be called anything except anime. Uh, and that's the fun thing about it. Uh, I have one last quote that I want to read. That's by you, and it's not really a quote, but the piece of it that I took was the perfect piece uh, for a quote to end the segment for today. And it says, "All right, I can draw. I'll try it. I'll teach it." That's the specific ending of the statement you said when you got the job for 601. All right, I can draw it. I'll try it. I'll teach it. How impactful hearing just those 4 syllables is it now, looking back on you've been doing it for this amount of time? Because those are motivational words, but just not for people hearing it, but for you saying it to yourself, because you're motivating yourself. I'm like, all right, I've been doing it for so long. I can draw it. So that means I can also teach it, because that's not a concept that people are able to transition for themselves. What was your thought process, and how motivational is that for you looking at it now that you've been able to do it?
Okay, so I mean, it comes full circle for me because um, since I have been doing it so long, it's like, okay, if I'm able to do this, I should be able to explain what I'm doing to somebody else. Because if I can't explain what I'm doing to somebody else, that means I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not consciously aware of, the process. So getting the job at 601 Studios, it was like a challenge to not only explain, you know, the concepts of like art to like children, sometimes even adults, uh, but different skill levels of people, different ages, and being able to say, hey, 5-year-old, here's what a line means, or here's what composition means. also adults here and make it a little more sophisticated. Like, oh, okay, well, composition is the layering of this other picture together. Composition. And making sure that they can both understand it. And if I am able to understand it well enough to explain it, then I truly actually know it. So
That's
it helps me.
Go ahead. I can wait to get there.
It also like helps me, stay motivated, because when that aha moment you see when somebody figures something out, or it just clicks in their brain, like that moment kind of keeps me going as far as like teaching goes too, because it's like, yeah, you've been frustrated with this, but have you considered these two things? And they go, oh, why didn't I think of that? It's like, I mean, you were just missing one little part, and we put the part together, but it
They
clicks in
don't
their
even say,
brain.
why did I think of that? They more like be like, I get it now. Because you see the light go off, and then you be like, so, well, let me ask you, have you thought of this? And they be like, you just made that so easy. And I'm like, I just asked you a question you should have been asking yourself. And one thing that always works for me is when I tell my students, I'll be like, I never forget what it's like for me to learn it. So when I'm teaching it, I always teach it like I'm still learning it, because I understand your struggles, because I remember my struggles. And so when I'm teaching them, and this is information I pass to you, I tell them I don't teach it from where I'm at. I teach it from when I remember my day one. That's how I'm walking. Because if I come in teaching you from where I'm at, then I'm looking for you to talk like I'm talking now, because I have all the knowledge now, not day one knowledge, because that's where you're all at now. You're at day one knowledge. So I need to constantly always remember my day one knowledge. Then when you get the day one knowledge, then you need to remember the day two knowledge. You need to remember what it's like for day three, day four, day five. Now, the next step in that is, in the middle of the first week, you're going to have some students that's going to automatically be like, I get it. And then some may not get it until graduation day. And they be like, I've been here 2 weeks and I didn't get it. And then you get that email like, I taught my first class and I got it. And that's why I tell them, I say, some of you may not get it till you leave here. Some of you are going to get it while you're here. And that's okay.
Yeah.
When you get it, email me. All right, and we're going to talk about it. And that's, for me, that's the important piece, is that you at least be present day by day while I'm trying to show it to you. Don't jump to 4 or 5 days, because you haven't even got today yet.
Right.
As much as you want to be on Thursday, don't overlook Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. Stay with me on Monday. Then let's go to Tuesday. Then let's go to Wednesday. I challenge people to always not point the finger at someone else before they start looking at their own issues. Because how can I tell Justin how to fix his issues if Teddy's never looked at his own? And so when you're talking to teachers and instructors, I can't tell them how to fix their own issues if I've never worked on my own. And that's the
true.
biggest part of being an instructor teacher. You have to work on your own issues. I always get them when I tell them, you came here with whatever issues you had. Don't get mad at me because I identify them. The biggest thing about me and my instruction is, I tell them, I said, the difference between me and other people is they're going to identify them and leave. I'm going to identify them and I'm going to help you work on them. That's the difference. But you can't get mad at me because I identify them, because you've had 20, 30, 40 years with those issues. I've only known you for 2 hours and I already know some of the problems that you got. You can't get mad at me because you understand what you're dealing with. I'm just trying to help you fix them.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, that's the rough part, because as people, we don't want to fix our own issues sometimes.
Yeah, because for one, it's like, I think it's personally like easier to see other people, because somebody told me, I can't remember who exactly, they said that it's easier to see, it's easier to see other people's like picture because you're not in the frame of their picture. So if I'm looking at you, like I'm looking at you on the screen, I see like stuff floating around your head was like, oh, here's your problems right here. And you doing that for me. And it's just like, that's how we all grow together. But it's hard to see your own picture because you're in it.
It's like, hey, get that stuff off your cheek, and you touching the other one, and I'm like, get the stuff off your cheek, and you over here. I'm like, no, man, get the stuff off your cheek. Yeah, and I'm like, get the stuff off your head, and you be like, where is that? Where is that? I'm like, man, it's right there, and you be like, but at the same time, I'm looking all around the spot that's on my head. It's that same sweep around your own front door before you try to sweep around mine.
Right,
but
man, here, right?
I add stuff to it. I say, you can only sweep so much dirt up under your mat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have to clean that off. So, as you sweeping around your own front door, make sure you also got the house clean too, because you need to do more than sweep around outside. You need to have the inside clean too. Mr. Justin, I appreciate you stopping by today, even past the technical difficulties, because as I told you when I started, I continue pushing on because that's part of my realness for the Hell I Don't Know podcast. Because sometimes things happen and you be like, hell, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. But you have to keep rolling. And being an artist yourself. Exactly. Being an artist yourself, you can't throw the canvas away because you don't have the colors. You have to paint with what you have. Today we painted a beautiful, masterful picture with what we had. With that being said, tell the people where they can reach you at, how they can get to you. I tried to fill in some of the time when we had some issues, but it's different coming from you because you have more knowledge of your whereabouts for social medias, for your website, that you can fill them in, promote yourself, do the best of promoting you that you can do.
Okay, so I am on Instagram, TikTok, and I think Pinterest as well, as Ransburg Art, and that's RANSBURGART. And I also have a website, justinransburg.art. So my first and last name .art. And those are the places that I'm most active.
The one thing I did forget to ask is you do logos, right?
Not as much now because the trade-off was not great for me. So on rare occasions,
I saw one on the internet that you had done. That's why I asked.
Well, which one was it?
I Googled it. So when I was looking for pictures, I Googled it and I saw one with a guy. I'll tell you when we get off. I didn't keep it. I just saw it. I'm like, oh, he does logos. That's awesome. But other than that, appreciate you stopping by. And the last thing I'll say is no matter what life throws at you or people try to do to you, you realize that if you take your time, you move swiftly, you move slowly, you move one step at a time, everything works out like it's supposed to work out. With that being said, everyone, I appreciate you coming by. And with that being said, we'll bless you all later.